Hi guys, in this video we're going to have another resin review.
Gruffy Crow.
Okay, so a few of you have seen the video I did a little while back on the SUNLU resin, which at the time was the cheapest on Amazon, and I was really impressed with it. It gets some really nice detail, and it's really good and flexible and robust. So pretty nice resin overall, and for the price, pretty much unbeatable. Really impressed with the stuff. So I think the guys over at SUNLU saw that video and offered to send me a couple of other of their resins to try. So that was the ABS, like I said, sold on that, big fan. This one, once again, comes with some free filters. That is quite handy. And we've got quite a few layers of plastic to get through here. This one is the high toughness resin from SUNLU. So I would worry about high toughness stuff because generally that would mean it's more brittle. But a lot of the pictures they use when they're selling this stuff is of miniatures. And said one of the big downsides of printer resin, even this lovely sort of ABS-like, is that sometimes it's not always as tough as you'd like. So we're going to give this a go. And I think the first models we're going to try it with are going to be these Star Elf Cavalry from Warp Miniatures. This guy, the banner bearer, is printed in the regular ABS-like, so this will work as a bit of a benchmark. So I'm going to shoot off the rest of the unit in this stuff, and I'll give you my initial thoughts. Okay, so we've got our first prints out of the UV cure for the new resin. You'll notice they're a little bit shiny. Some of that will wear off, some of that is because I really need to change the alcohol in my cleaning machine. But they are looking pretty nice. This guy stood out as me as having incredibly sharp detail. I don't know if that's just because of the sculpt. I might have to try printing something like this Cultist from the other resin again. Just to try and get a side-by-side comparison, actually, because that does look crisper, which is not something I was expecting. But he definitely shows there's no problem at all with detail and crispness on this resin. Really happy with that. One of the first things I noticed as I was cleaning these guys up was the support materials here. Real floppy. Like, that is unusual for what I'm used to. This is the. I also noticed straight away that we had some weird issues with some of these supports, some of the taller ones, where they've not printed correctly, and that has resulted in some misprints, which is not something I've had. But then I think maybe the reason for this and the reason for the misprints might be that I just need to up the exposure a bit more on this one. I always assume that maybe we'd have to dial this resin in a little bit. Also, these are incredibly complex models. It'd be hard to think of a model with more complexity than these, really, as far as trying to get them printed in one piece goes. It's probably never going to be completely problem-free. But this guy, or girl I should say, has come off perfectly fine by the looks of things. We've still got a little few supports and things to clear up, but yeah, no complaint over the detail. But out of the 5 of them, we've got one miscast shield, misprinted shield I should say, but no other problems. Missing the end of this sword. We've got another shield that's kind of torn, and all I can think of is that we're just underexposing. This is just not curing right to get these sorts of problems, I think. And we appear to have another one that is spot on. So I'm going to put the good ones aside for now, and let's have a little play with these. So these have been printed at my normal settings, and then we cured them for 3 minutes, which I don't think is long enough, because that is crazy. That is a right angle, and it appears to be going back. It's not flicking all the way back, it stays bent, but that is flexibility like I've not seen. Let's try and break. That seems hard to do. And look at that, we've got twist on that. I said these are fresh off the printer and fresh out the curing machine. I do wonder what they'll be like in a few hours. But this is... that is all my strength. You have to bend it past 90 degrees before you have any problems there. But if you do it slow, we're getting crack in there. But I think that's because it's still so soft. Yeah, that's interesting. So this guy, just a problem with the shield. We're going to do some drop tests. So I'm sat at a regular desk at the moment. And we've got a sort of hard lino floor down there. No bounce in it whatsoever. Quite a few models have gone to their doom on this floor. So let's have a go. Okay, I've been throwing this guy around for a little while now. He's managed to get some floor smuts in him. We have lost the tip off the spear. I didn't see when that happened. Might be worth noting that we also lost the tip off the spear on the this guy when I was taking him out of the supports. So it is probably the weakest part of the model. Oh, another thing about these models is they are scaled down. They're only printed at 90%. And that was to sort of fit them nicely more in a sort of Oathmark scale rather than the sort of scale they came in. So you'd probably have less problems with these spear tips if they were 10% bigger. But yeah, no, I dropped this guy from waist height, from chair height a few times. No problems at all. I then dropped it from sort of head height a few times. Still no problems. We've not lost anything. As I said, this tip, I don't know how we test that some more. But then I even got to the point where I was basically hurling it at the ceiling. And it was bouncing a good 12 inches when it hit the floor. And we have not lost any of these wingtips, legs or anything like that. Whereas I am almost 100% confident we could not do the same with this guy. In fact, I said we need a new spear tip on here anyway. Let's find out. One drop from head height, and this is fractured in 3 places. Not a surprise. If I dropped a model like this from even desk height, I'd be worried about breakages. A quite aggressive drop, like I just did. Not a surprise we've lost big chunks. The exact same from this guy. Just did it again with the exact same movement. No problem whatsoever. So there's definitely some sort of toughness increase. Okay, so we ran off the Elven Knights again, and we got some perfect prints, no failures, no ripped shields. That'd be the same one, the Smuff, but yeah, no problems this time. I just upped the exposure time by ½ a second, and they're a little bit sturdier, but we've still got absolutely tons of flex, which is good to see. Weirdly, I will note I still lost the tip off the banner. I'm not sure it even printed, so that's twice that's possibly not printed. I also use this opportunity to print one of my little Tabletop Foundry calibration cones setups. So if this is this side says failure, and these all should fail, which looks good, and this side says success, and these should all join in the middle and have printed. We could probably up the exposure a little bit more to get those closer without those failing. But I would say that's fairly well dialed in, to be honest. I'm fairly happy with that as a result on this little thing, which I have actually found quite useful in the past for getting stuff. So I'll remember that. The toughened stuff takes an extra 0.5 of a second per layer. And I said instantly, as soon as I started taking these out, I realised that the support material was already a lot firmer, which I think is what accounted for the misprints last time. Here in my hands now as well, I printed off a second one of these Cultists from Vivictus. And we've got the ABS like here, and we've got, if we look at the daggers specifically, we've got sort of flex here and they kind of pop back into place, and they wouldn't take much to snap them off, but they're nice and sturdy, and we've got pretty good detail. Now this is the toughness resin, and I would say detail for detail, that if anything this is a little bit crisper. For instance, if we just look at this little hole on the back here, I would say that is a tad deeper on this one, and the rings on the back, obviously backs are, you actually suffer a lot, I find, because these are printed at 45 degrees back. There's a lot of detail on the back sometimes, whereas I would say that this might be marginally more, just little things like the edge of the robe there looks a bit crisper, and the details on the robes. Now it is a slightly darker resin, which will help show up the details. But yeah, no, I would say that the toughness, it might just be that I haven't got this quite dialed in, but the toughness resin does seem to actually hold that little bit better detail, which is quite interesting to know. What I will say about this one is these daggers, as I said, they're very skinny and flicky on this one. They are absolutely flexible on this guy. So he's had the extended exposure time per layer plus my normal 3 minutes in the UV. So he should be fully cured now. There should be no problem there. But he is very flexible. And the problem is, I would have maybe if you put him in a case, there is nothing really keeping these straight. They're just flicky. I think that would be a symptom of the toughness. You know, that's called that flex. It's not going anywhere. Could be interesting to try and paint something that flexible. Would it hold the paint well? Which I guess is something we can quite easily find out. Okay, so it's been a few days now, and I can confirm that models printed in that resin hold paint. That is fine. What I did find though was I put this guy in my case, and I had a bad case of a warped sword that was wrapped almost around his body when he came out of the case after a few hours, and it didn't want to bend back. And I have just snapped it, trying to straighten it, which tells me two things. One, that it's possibly not going to be the best resin for minis if they're going to be in cases and stuff. And two, I have noticed, so if we take a look at these guys we just saw, we've got our regular resin one and our floppy resin one. There's still a lot of flex in this dagger, and it doesn't seem to be affecting the primer job. But I would say that even priming it, something has happened to make that a little bit more firm, not quite as just gooey. And it might just be time, but it might be some sort of reaction with the paint. I'm saying that because we've got some bits here, plague cart that I've been working on. This was a misprint, but through my own foolishness there was something on the screen, which is very flexible. This is probably not as flexible as it was when it came off the printer, but this still very much reminds me of sort of like Reaper Bones material, if anyone's handled that before. Still very flexible. No problem for detail still, but yeah, probably more detailed than a Reaper Bones piece, but definitely got that kind of rubbery flex to it. So if this was under any kind of pressure in a case, I feel like that would start to conform to whatever was happening and wouldn't necessarily pop back. But as I said, I'm pretty confident it would hold paint during that. I've had no problem doing, I've painted a few models now using this, and yeah, no problems at all. However, as I said, I'm starting to lean towards this maybe not being the best resin for just purely for miniatures, as we've got some things like this. So this is the horses we did the other day. As you can see, this lance, it's got a bit of a bend on it, still very, very floppy. So it's going to be a case of you're going to be straightening that back quite often, I think. And an even worse problem with this horse is you've got, pretty sure I didn't glue it down with a lean. We've got a issue here where the actual weight of the model wants to kind of flop over to the side like this. and I'm probably going to have to unglue this and glue it back maybe to try and counter that. Because yeah, I noticed the other day that had sort of sagged. So I think the answer to that would be, I don't need my minis to be this flexible and this tough. I said it was quite impressive how well they survived the drop tests, but maybe we can take some of those characteristics, but without some of these downsides we're spotting now. So I printed this using a 50-50 mix of the Toughness resin and the SUNLU ABS light that I usually use, which I think has successfully captured some of the characteristics of both resins. Another miscast, once again my fault, not the resin, and we've got what we need. It's a lot firmer, but as you can see from all these breaks, this is me sort of testing it, we've got a lot of bend, but it does snap a lot sooner. But we're not going to have any of those problems with it sort of flopping or sagging now. And I think you could probably put something made of this in a case, and I kind of have done since, and we'd have less problems. For instance, we've got this guy, and I think, you know, you've got that sort of bend and toughness. Said the paint's holding fine, but I'm not going to worry about this bow if he goes in a snug case at all. However, I can think of some uses that this will be spot on for. For instance, there's a couple of little pegs missing out of the back of my car that the sort of boot cover thing sits on, and I need to design something to replace those. And that extra sort of toughness and flexibility and rebound will definitely help make those bits a bit more long lasting. Also, I designed this a little while ago. This is a little doodah for connecting my microphone, which I'm having trouble with, you may have noticed in this video, onto my camera stand through a little cold shoe sort of connection. So then this bit fits onto the stand. This is an older version. I've actually made it a little bit better since then. But what I could do with the more flexible resin is add some little teeth under here, and we'd have that extra flex, because obviously this bit's got no flex at all. But I've made these quite thick to make them nice and durable. Whereas if I was making it with the flex resin, these could be thinner, and I said there could be little teeth or something under there, so this would just clip on more like a sort of more regular plasticky part. So that's something I'm going to have to try, and that's this kind of practical use. Oh, and there's some wheels I want to put on something as well, where I'm going to have to make a little socket. Once again, I said for this kind of practical use, I think this resin will be spot on. So I'll certainly be getting some use out of it, as well as sort of mixing it with some of my regular SUNLU resin to get the sort of best of both worlds for my minis. I think from now on it's going to be regular practice just to drip a bit of this in, probably about 30% I think, just to really help give a bit of extra durability to my minis. So overall, as I said, downsides, the pure resin on its own might be a bit too bendy, a bit too flexible for my uses for miniatures, but there's definitely holds a beautiful amount of detail. It said it's got a lot of the same sort of good qualities as the regular sort of ABS-like resin that I've been using from SUNLU. And I said I think for more practical sort of things out in the world that aren't miniatures, I think it will be spot on. So I'm very impressed with this resin. What do you guys think? What would you use it for? And how flexible would you want your minis to be? Let me know down in the comments. And that's all for this video. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Maybe subscribe for more. And as ever, thanks for watching. Bye.